Throughout history, the whisper of lost civilizations has echoed across time, drawing explorers, dreamers, and historians alike. We speak of legendary cities, civilizations swallowed by the sands of time or the unforgiving waves of the ocean Atlantis, El Dorado, the fabled cities of the Silk Road. Yet these tales often come from distant lands, places where discovery feels almost inevitable. But what if a city of comparable grandeur, a true medieval metropolis, a veritable city of gold, existed not in some far-flung corner of the world, but right here, in the heart of Europe, only to vanish so completely from our maps and our memories? Tonight on Medieval Times Uncharted, we confront a paradox that challenges the very fabric of our historical understanding. We delve into the perplexing mystery of a city that, by all accounts, should have been a cornerstone of medieval European power and prosperity, yet left barely a trace in the chronicles we hold so dear. How could such a monumental center of wealth, culture, and influence simply cease to be recorded, disappearing as if it were nothing more than a fleeting dream? Imagine, if you will, a bustling urban center during the High Middle Ages, a period often misrepresented as dark and stagnant, but in truth, one of vibrant innovation, sophisticated commerce, and burgeoning empires. This city, let's call it Aurelia, the Golden One, would have rivaled the grandeur of Venice, the intellectual prowess of Paris, or the mercantile might of the Hanseatic League. Its markets would have overflowed with exotic goods, its streets thronged with merchants and artisans, its coffers swollen with the wealth of trade and dominion. Its architecture would have been a testament to its prosperity, soaring cathedrals piercing the sky, fortified walls gleaming in the sun, and grand municipal buildings reflecting the confidence of its civic leaders. The term City of Gold doesn't necessarily mean its buildings were literally gilded, but rather that its prosperity was so profound, its economic engine so powerful, that gold permeated every aspect of its existence, from the coins jingling in its merchants' purses to the elaborate jewelry adorning its elite, and the rich tapestries gracing its aristocratic homes. And yet, despite this imagined splendor, Aurelia is absent from the meticulous records of medieval cartographers, the detailed travelogues of pilgrims, and the extensive chronicles of kings and popes. This isn't just about a settlement that was abandoned or fell into ruin. History is full of those. Aurelia's fate is far more perplexing. It appears to have been erased. You see, the Middle Ages, particularly from the 11th to the 14th centuries, were an era of increasing documentation. Monasteries kept detailed annals, royal chanceries produced countless administrative records, and universities fostered a growing literate class. For a city of Aurelia's implied stature to completely vanish from this burgeoning landscape of written history implies something truly extraordinary. It points not just to oblivion, but to a deliberate suppression, an accident of such cataclysmic scale that even memory failed, or a conspiracy so profound it altered the historical narrative itself. The common understanding of historical discovery relies on finding physical remnants, ruins, artifacts, inscriptions that match documented locations. But what if the physical evidence is hidden, and the documentation is either non-existent or deliberately misleading? Our journey into the enigma of Aurelia forces us to look beyond the obvious, to question the silences in our history books, and to seek out the faint echoes of a powerful past that simply refuses to stay buried. The quest for Aurelia isn't just an archaeological puzzle, it's a philosophical one. It asks us to consider the impermanence of even the greatest human achievements and the selective nature of historical memory. It reminds you that the past is not a fixed, unchangeable entity, but a narrative that can be shaped, altered, and sometimes utterly lost. Join us as we venture into this uncharted territory, searching for the golden city that dared to disappear. The sheer audacity of Aurelia's disappearance forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the stability of medieval urban centers. While many towns declined or were abandoned, they usually left behind extensive ruins, chronicled demises, or at least a persistent memory in local folklore. Aurelia's silence is profound, almost a deliberate act of historical omission. How could a city of such presumed importance simply evaporate from the collective consciousness and the meticulously kept records of the age? One might first consider the brutal, indifferent hand of nature. The Middle Ages were a time when humanity was far more vulnerable to the whims of the environment. Could Aurelia have been swallowed by a cataclysmic natural disaster? Imagine a city situated in a geologically active zone, perhaps along an ancient fault line. A massive earthquake, not just shaking buildings, but fundamentally altering the landscape, could have leveled its grand structures, triggered devastating landslides, or even diverted the very rivers that nourished its commerce. The earth literally consuming its own creation. Or picture a city nestled within a fertile river valley. While rivers brought life and trade, they also brought peril. A prolonged period of extreme rainfall, perhaps combined with rapid snowmelt from distant mountains, could have turned Aurelia's lifeblood into a destructive torrent. A monumental flood wouldn't just wash away homes, it would deposit vast layers of silt and debris, burying the city beneath meters of earth. Over centuries, nature would reclaim the land. Forests would grow over the buried metropolis, erasing any visual sign of its former glory. Less common in Europe, but still a possibility, is volcanic activity. Even a distant eruption could have blanketed Aurelia in ash and pumice, suffocating its inhabitants and preserving its structures in a deathly pall. Such an event would render the city uninhabitable, forcing any survivors to flee, leaving behind a place that, over time, would blend into the natural landscape, its artificial contours smoothed by wind and rain, camouflaged by new vegetation. The richness of the volcanic soil, ironically, would then allow life to flourish over the forgotten city. Beyond sudden catastrophe, what about the slow, insidious decline caused by climate change? The medieval warm period, which fueled Europe's agricultural boom and population growth, eventually gave way to the Little Ice Age. Cooler temperatures, erratic weather patterns, and repeated crop failures could have gradually eroded Aurelia's economic base. As its surrounding farmlands became less productive, its food supply dwindled, and its trade network suffered. The city would have become unsustainable. Its inhabitants, facing starvation, would have slowly but surely abandoned their once golden homes, leaving it to fall silent, brick by painstaking brick. But what if Aurelia's downfall was not a consequence of nature's wrath, but of humanity's? The Middle Ages were also an era of constant warfare and political upheaval. Powerful cities were often targets of conquest, their wealth a temptation, their strategic location a prize. Could Aurelia have fallen victim to a particularly brutal siege, followed by a systematic sacking and razing by a victorious army? Consider the sheer ferocity of medieval warfare. Cities were often destroyed not just to defeat an enemy, but to annihilate their capacity to ever rise again. If Aurelia was the stronghold of a powerful, rebellious lord or a rival trade center, its destruction might have been total. Buildings dismantled for their stone, records burned, and its population scattered or enslaved. Such an event would create a gaping hole in the map, a silent testament to a victor's ruthlessness. The completeness of Aurelia's absence, however, pushes us beyond mere destruction. It suggests an act of deliberate historical erasure. Imagine a victorious power, not content with merely destroying the city, but determined to wipe its very memory from existence. Why? Perhaps Aurelia held a dangerous secret, a forbidden knowledge, or represented a political ideology that the new powers deemed too dangerous to remember. This concept of deliberate historical erasure is perhaps the most chilling explanation for Aurelia's absolute disappearance. It's one thing for a city to fall to natural disaster or the ravages of war. It's another entirely for its very existence to be systematically scrubbed from memory. What motive could compel such an extreme act? Perhaps Aurelia wasn't just a city, it was a symbol, a powerful rival, or even the seat of a heresy so profound that its very name was deemed a threat to established order. Consider the political landscape of medieval Europe. Kings, emperors, and the papacy constantly vied for dominance. If Aurelia represented a major economic or military power base for a defeated faction, a rebellious baron, a deposed king, or even a rival religious order, the victors might have sought to eliminate not just its physical presence, but also any trace of its legitimacy. Erasing Aurelia from the maps and chronicles would be a powerful statement. This place never truly was, and therefore its claims to power are utterly invalid. The methods of such erasure would be insidious and thorough. Cartographers would be compelled, perhaps under threat of death, to remove Aurelia from future maps, or to subtly misrepresent its location as a desolate wilderness. Royal scribes would omit any mention of it from official documents. Local historians and chroniclers might have their archives confiscated and destroyed. Even oral traditions could be suppressed, with severe punishments for anyone found speaking of the forbidden city. Imagine a king, fresh from a costly victory, dictating to his chroniclers the new history, a history where Aurelia simply never achieved the prominence it once held, or where it conveniently never existed at all. The very roads leading to it might be deliberately abandoned or rerouted, its former trade routes diverted to other, more compliant cities. Over generations, with no written records, no official recognition, and no visible ruins, the memory of Aurelia would fade into local superstition, or blend into generic tales of a rich city from long ago. This scenario transforms our search from a purely archaeological endeavor into a detective story of historical revisionism. We're not just looking for buried stones, but for suppressed truths. The clues wouldn't be explicit mentions of Aurelia, but rather the anomalies in existing records. Why does this particular region appear as a blank space on a map that otherwise meticulously details every hamlet? Why do certain monastic records from a specific period suddenly become incomplete or confusing when discussing trade routes in a particular direction? The concept of a city's memory being actively suppressed is a chilling reminder of how history is written by the victors. For centuries, the victor's narrative has been the prevailing truth. Yet the past is stubborn, it leaves faint echoes. It leaves gaps that, when examined closely, betray the deliberate omissions. A slight inconsistency in a trade ledger, a cryptic reference in a forgotten poem, a local folktale that sounds a little too specific for fiction, these could be the fragments that hint at Aurelia's true story. The geographical position of such a deliberately erased city would likely be strategically important, yet also vulnerable to being isolated. Perhaps it sat at the crossroads of competing powers, or in a borderland region that changed hands frequently, making its historical record fragmented and susceptible to reinterpretation by new rulers. Its prosperity, the very thing that made it golden, would also be its undoing, making it a prize too rich to be allowed to exist independently, or for its memory to persist without control. The search for Aurelia, therefore, is an act of defiance against this historical silence. It is about recovering a narrative that was forcibly silenced, unearthing not just a city, but the story of why it was so utterly removed from our collective consciousness. It challenges us to not just read history, but to interrogate it, to look for what is there, and to ask why. The lost city of gold might not be lost due to simple forgetfulness, but because powerful forces desired its absolute oblivion. So if Aurelia was not merely lost but actively erased, how then do we, centuries later, even begin to piece together its forgotten existence? The answer lies in the subtle nuances, the inconsistencies, and the technological advancements that allow us to peel back layers of time and suppression. This is where the detective work truly begins, moving beyond the obvious lack of records to scrutinize the shadows of history. Our first line of investigation would focus on archaeological anomalies. Imagine a region, perhaps one that now appears as an unremarkable forest or agricultural land, where a disproportionate number of high-quality medieval artifacts are occasionally found by farmers or hobbyists. Not just a few coins, but fragments of sophisticated pottery, pieces of architectural ornamentation, or even remnants of advanced metallurgical work, far beyond what would be expected from a typical village or rural settlement of the era. These seemingly random finds, when mapped out, might begin to form a concentrated cluster, hinting at a much larger, more organized settlement beneath the surface. Next, we would employ the eyes of the 21st century. LiDAR light detection and ranging technology, for instance, has revolutionized archaeology by allowing us to see through dense vegetation and even shallow soil layers. A LiDAR scan over such a region might reveal a regular, rectilinear pattern hidden beneath the forest canopy, the ghostly street plan of a city, the foundations of large public buildings, or the telltale outlines of defensive walls that betray an urban past where only nature now seems to reign. This digital ghost could be the first definitive confirmation of Aurelia's physical presence. Beyond the physical, we must re-examine the written word. If Aurelia was deliberately erased, its name might have been removed, but its presence could still be felt in the narrative. We would search for cryptic references in obscure, often overlooked medieval texts. Perhaps a merchant's ledger from a distant city mentions a great trading partner to the west or the eastern market without naming it, simply because the name had become taboo. A travelogue might describe an impossibly long journey between two known cities, implying a major waypoint that is never identified. These are the spectral footprints of a missing entity. Even more tantalizing are the gaps and omissions in well-known historical documents. Why does a royal charter granting lands abruptly skip over a certain area, describing it as uninhabited, when nearby lands are meticulously detailed? Why does a series of chronicles, usually comprehensive, suddenly become vague or silent about events in a specific geographical sector during a period of known conflict? These silences are not necessarily mistakes, they could be deliberate blanks, intended to obscure. The local folklore also becomes crucial. While often dismissed as mere superstition, folk tales frequently preserve echoes of historical truth. Stories of a city swallowed by the earth, a golden treasure buried beneath the hills, or a cursed place no one dares to name often have roots in real events. If these tales converge on a specific location and are unusually persistent and detailed for their age, they might offer invaluable clues, pointing towards a place that was so important, even suppression couldn't entirely silence its memory. The rediscovery of Aurelia would be more than just an archaeological triumph, it would be a profound recalibration of our understanding of medieval Europe. It would force historians to rewrite sections of their narratives, to acknowledge a forgotten center of power and culture, and to reconsider the fragility of historical truth itself. What other lost cities might be hidden in plain sight, their memory suppressed by the very documents we rely on? Unearthing Aurelia would not only resurrect a city, but also expose the mechanisms of historical control and the deliberate manipulation of memory. It would be a stark reminder that what we know as history is often a curated narrative, and that profound truths can lie dormant, waiting for the right tools and the right questions to bring them back into the light. The city of gold, once lost, could then become a beacon, illuminating the dark corners of our past. Imagine the moment of revelation. Not a single grand stroke, but a series of painstaking discoveries converging. An aerial survey using advanced thermal imaging detects anomalies underground consistent heat signatures, suggesting buried structures that retain warmth differently than surrounding soil. This leads to ground-penetrating radar scans, which then begin to paint a clearer picture, an intricate network of foundations, clearly man-made, deep beneath the seemingly untouched landscape. Simultaneously, a team of dedicated medievalists, poring over dusty, forgotten archives in a monastery library, stumbles upon a cryptic marginal note in a 13th-century illuminated manuscript. It speaks of a golden citadel, situated where the three rivers weep into the Great Lake, a place whose light was quenched by the shadow of the serpent. Dismissed for centuries as poetic allegory, This note suddenly takes on a chilling new significance when juxtaposed with the precise geographical coordinates identified by the remote sensing data. The first archaeological teams arrive, carefully marking out grids on the forest floor. The initial digging is slow, meticulous. But then a shovel hits something solid, unmistakably worked stone. Soon more. The corner of a wall, then a paved street, then the remnants of a column base. Each piece of debris, each fragment of pottery, each corroded coin brought to the surface is a voice from the past, clamoring to be heard after centuries of imposed silence. The excitement is palpable. The fragments tell a story of immense wealth, high-quality glazed ceramics, imported silk remnants, meticulously crafted metalwork, even traces of gold leaf on what might have been a public statue or a church altarpiece. These aren't the humble possessions of a forgotten hamlet. They are the hallmarks of a sophisticated, prosperous urban center, a true city of gold. As more is uncovered, the scale of Aurelia becomes clear. Broad avenues, clearly defined residential blocks, a formidable defensive wall system, and the imposing foundations of what must have been a magnificent cathedral or a grand marketplace. This wasn't merely a large town, it was indeed a metropolis, capable of sustaining a significant population and facilitating extensive trade. The serpent mentioned in the ancient manuscript begins to gain context. Perhaps it wasn't a mythical beast, but a veiled reference to a powerful, aggressive kingdom or a devastating political faction that sought to destroy Aurelia and erase its memory. The archaeological evidence might even bear scars of its violent end-burn layers, shattered artifacts, and perhaps even mass graves that hint at a brutal conquest rather than a gradual decline. The implications of Aurelia's rediscovery ripple far beyond the archaeological community. Historians are forced to reconsider established narratives of medieval power, trade routes, and political boundaries. If such a significant city could have been so utterly forgotten, what other blind spots exist in our understanding of the past? It opens a Pandora's box of questions, challenging the very sources and methodologies that have defined medieval studies for centuries. The textbooks will need to be rewritten. New maps will be drawn, painstakingly filling in the blank space where Aurelia once thrived. The story of its rise, its period of glory, and its tragic, almost intentional demise will become a new chapter in the grand saga of European history. And in this rediscovery, you find not just a lost city, but a profound lesson about the fragility of historical memory and the enduring power of truth, waiting patiently beneath the earth. This isn't just about adding another name to a list of medieval towns. It's about understanding the medieval world in a deeper, more nuanced way. Aurelia's existence and its subsequent erasure would force us to confront the uncomfortable realities of power dynamics, propaganda, and the deliberate shaping of history. It would be a monument to both human ambition and human fallibility. The rediscovery of Aurelia would inevitably ignite a global fascination. Its story, initially confined to academic journals and archaeological reports, would burst onto the world stage. Documentaries would follow, books would be written, and the site itself would become a focal point for history enthusiasts, scholars, and curious travelers. Yet the story of Aurelia would be unlike any other. It wouldn't just be a narrative of ancient grandeur, but a testament to how profoundly history can be manipulated and forgotten. What kind of culture would Aurelia have fostered? Given its implied wealth and strategic location, it's highly probable it was a melting pot of peoples and ideas. Merchants from distant lands would have brought not just goods, but also diverse customs, languages, and religious practices. Aurelia might have been a beacon of tolerance, or perhaps a place of intense cultural friction. Its opulence a thin veneer over underlying tensions. The artifacts unearthed would speak volumes: imported silks from the East, intricate glassware from Venice, unique coin mintages reflecting local authority, and perhaps even early forms of printing or innovative craftsmanship. The art of Aurelia, if preserved, would be particularly revealing. Did its artists follow the prevailing styles of Western European Gothic? Or did they incorporate influences from Byzantine or Islamic traditions, reflecting its position at a cultural crossroads? Its literature, if any fragments are found, could offer a glimpse into the minds of its citizens, their hopes, fears, and perhaps their foreknowledge of impending doom. Finding a library or even remnants of one would be an unimaginable treasure, potentially holding the very chronicles that were meant to be erased. The ethical considerations of excavating such a site would also be paramount. Is it a mass grave? Is it a place of deep spiritual significance for any surviving cultural descendants, even if their lineage is now fractured and forgotten? The very act of unearthing Aurelia would not only be a scientific triumph, but a profound humanitarian responsibility, treating the lost with the dignity they were denied in their own time. The questions surrounding Aurelia's demise would undoubtedly spur new research into other blank spaces on medieval maps, other regions that seem unusually devoid of major urban centers despite favorable conditions. Could there be more Aurelias hidden beneath the soil, victims of similar cataclysms or deliberate erasures? The Golden City would become a potent symbol, not just of what was lost, but of what could still be found if we dared to look beyond the accepted narratives. And what of the curse of Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Templars, who famously cursed King Philip IV and Pope Clement V to meet him before God's judgment within a year? If Aurelia was indeed tied to some suppressed medieval power, perhaps its destruction was also part of a larger, more intricate web of power struggles, rivalries, and desperate measures taken by medieval monarchs and religious authorities. The thought that such a major center could be erased to silence a voice or hide a truth is a chilling testament to the ruthlessness of the age. Aurelia's story is a compelling reminder that history is not a static collection of facts, but a dynamic, ever-unfolding narrative. It is a dialogue between the past and the present, where new discoveries constantly challenge old assumptions. The Golden City, once a legend, then a forgotten whisper, would finally reclaim its rightful place, not just as a physical entity, but as a crucial missing piece in the grand tapestry of the medieval world. Its recovery would signify more than just an archaeological find. It would be the recovery of a forgotten truth, a testament to the enduring human spirit that, even after centuries of oblivion, finds a way to speak across time. The sheer weight of Aurelia's rediscovery would undoubtedly force a profound re-evaluation of established historical figures and narratives. Imagine the official chroniclers of powerful medieval kingdoms, those whose records have been taken as gospel for centuries, now having their omissions exposed. Were they genuinely ignorant of Aurelia, or were they complicit in its erasure? The political machinations of figures like King Philip IV, already scrutinized for his role in the Templar downfall, might be viewed through an even darker lens. Could Aurelia have been another victim of his insatiable hunger for wealth and centralized power? Its fate a blueprint for his later assault on the Templars? The very maps of medieval Europe, which we now hold as authoritative representations of the past, would instantly become incomplete, perhaps even deceptive documents. The gaps and blank spaces, once attributed to lack of exploration or cartographic imprecision, would now reveal themselves as potential zones of deliberate historical obfuscation. This realization could spark a wave of renewed scrutiny across countless historical texts and geographical data, leading to a broader quest for other forgotten places. Moreover, the discovery of Aurelia would inevitably shed new light on known historical events that currently lack full explanation. Perhaps the sudden wealth of a neighboring kingdom, whose origins are vague in the records, could now be attributed to the spoils taken from Aurelia, or the mysterious disappearance of certain intellectual movements or trade guilds might be traced back to the destruction and suppression of this powerful metropolis. Aurelia might hold the key to unlocking other medieval enigmas. The process of interpreting Aurelia's history once unearthed would be uniquely challenging. Unlike cities whose decline was chronicled by others, Aurelia's story would be told primarily through its ruins and the few, likely biased, surviving fragments of evidence. Archaeologists and historians would have to reconstruct its identity, its culture, and its demise from a state of near-total silence. This would necessitate new interdisciplinary approaches, merging archaeology, historical linguistics, to decipher any unique scripts or dialects, and even digital humanities to model its possible social structures and economic networks. The narrative of Aurelia would become a cautionary tale for modern times. In an age where information is abundant but often manipulated, the story of a city deliberately erased from history resonates with a powerful contemporary relevance. It serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of truth and the enduring power of those who seek to control it. The Golden City, once hidden, would now stand as a monument to the constant struggle against forgetting, a beacon for those who champion the complete, unvarnished story of humanity. Its rediscovery wouldn't just be about reclaiming a physical place, it would be about reclaiming a lost perspective, a missing voice from the chorus of medieval Europe. What unique insights into governance, trade, art, or daily life might Aurelia offer that are currently absent from our understanding? Its very existence implies a counter-narrative to the prevailing historical consensus. A vibrant urban center that dared to flourish outside the well-documented spheres of influence. And as the excavations continue, and more of Aurelia reveals itself, the deepest mystery might not be how it vanished, but why the attempt to erase it was so thorough. What secret, what threat, what unforgivable challenge did this city pose that warranted such an absolute obliteration from the annals of time? The answer to that question might be the true gold of Aurelia, a profound insight into the darkest corners of human ambition and the lengths to which power will go to secure its narrative. The lost city of gold, Aurelia, once a figment of historical speculation, now stands on the precipice of becoming one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of our age. Its unearthing is not just the finding of bricks and mortar, but the rediscovery of a forgotten truth, a challenge to our historical complacency, and a powerful testament to the fact that some stories, no matter how deeply buried, will always find a way to resurface. And on Medieval Times Uncharted, we will be watching, listening, and bringing you every revelation. The story of Aurelia, the lost city of gold, reminds us that history is not a dusty collection of facts, but a living, breathing tapestry woven with triumphs, tragedies, and the intentional silences of forgotten places. Its potential rediscovery is more than an archaeological event. It is a profound act of historical justice, challenging us to question what we think we know, and to remain eternally curious about the untold stories waiting beneath our feet. If the echoes of Aurelia's hidden past resonated with you today, if the thought of a lost civilization actively erased from memory stirred something deep within, then you are precisely who we make these journeys for. Join our expedition into the uncharted territories of history. Don't let the algorithms decide if you see our next revelation. Subscribe to Medieval Times Uncharted now and hit that notification bell, so you never miss another journey into the mysteries that shaped our world. We want to hear your thoughts on Aurelia. What aspect of its disappearance intrigues you the most? Do you believe in the possibility of deliberate historical erasure? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with your own curiosity about the hidden truths of the past, comment Aurelia Reclaimed. Your engagement fuels our quest for knowledge. If you've made it this far, if you've allowed yourself to ponder the fate of the Golden City, then please, give this video a like. It helps us bring these forgotten tales to a wider audience, ensuring that no story remains buried forever. And as always, the journey continues. On your screen now, you'll find our next deep dive into a captivating medieval mystery. Click to uncover more secrets, more power, and more of the untold stories that defined our past. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep unearthing the truth.